Today we're doing a shootout between the Rode Procaster and the Rode PodMic. Let's get into it. Welcome back folks, my name's Shane. So as you saw in the intro, we're doing a comparison between the Rode Procaster and the PodMic, which is my most recent microphone. I've been using the Procaster now for a couple of months, and I just picked this up a few days ago, and we've already used it for an in-house podcast here at the house, and I was very, very impressed. So I thought I'd share my experience using both of these microphones with you guys, and if it's helpful, please give the video the thumbs up. I appreciate that. Before we get going, full disclosure, I actually paid full price for both of these microphones here in Melbourne, Australia. The Procaster was about $200 and the PodMic was about $150. Now that will vary depending on where you live in the world, but it was worth mentioning because this will be a pros and a cons review and my experience using both of these microphones, kind of migrating away from using large diaphragm condenser mics. Let's get into it. Let's start off talking directly into the front of the Rode Procaster. I love how this sounds, and I think it's a necessity to have one of these little windshields or a pop filter or something in front of the microphone. It will just stop the plosives. These microphones do have a built-in pop filter, but it's next to useless. I don't really like using it without this, and I like the sound of this talking directly into the front. Now, a lot of people will say you should talk across the grill instead of into it, but it does lose a certain something when you're talking across it as opposed to talking right into it. I think this just sounds way nicer. The proximity effect kicks in, and it's nice and big and warm sounding and nice and clear. There's a lot of top end in there as well, and this will be completely unprocessed. Over to the other mic. Over to the Rode PodMic now, talking at about the same distance away from the grill, right into the front. I actually really like how this sounds. It feels nice and balanced. It's not too much of a bump in the low end. It's kind of a flatter sound, but it still has a really nice crisp top end that might not be quite as bright as the Procaster, but it's very, very close, and it's nothing that you can't adjust in post if you do need a little bit of extra top end. So if we were to talk across the grill a little bit more, my head's on a funny angle while I shoot on this video, but yeah, you'd usually just turn the mic a little bit, but if you're going to be talking across it, this is how it sounds. And again, I think it still shines when you talk directly into the front, and this is the kind of sound I want when I'm talking into one of these mics. I actually don't want that sound. It just doesn't sound anywhere near as good or as sort of close up and at the center of your attention as it sounds when you're talking straight into the grill. Let's try both of the mics now a little bit further back with the windshield off. So this is how the Rode Procaster sounds. Let's tilt the mic and we'll talk across the front. Now, I actually really like this sound. It does drastically change. It's kind of like the EQ of it a little bit. It makes it maybe sound a little bit bigger, but also a little bit less tops, in my opinion. Once you get back to the front, you'll notice that it sounds drastically different. I still prefer this sound for whatever reason. But how bad are the plosives? I guess I'll find out. I can hear a few even in my headphones right now. So, yeah, one of the small limitations without one of these. And now back to the Rode PodMic. This particular microphone, in my opinion, is better straight out of the box without having to use a pop filter or a little windshield like this. It handles the plosives a whole lot better, in my opinion. Even talking directly into the front, it definitely does a better job, and it's a lot less distracting with those booms that come through on certain words. So let's just turn it around to the side a little bit, and I'll go ahead and talk into or across the front of the grill. And we'll see how that sounds now. And I think that actually sounds pretty nice. I can't hear any plosives while I talk across the front. And this is how it sounds again, right into the center of the grill. And I kind of still prefer this sound. It just sounds better. Up next, we're going to check out the off-axis rejection. I'm also using a K&M pop filter just to stop those plosives. I've said plosives way too many times in this video. I apologize, but it's something that a lot of people don't point out, so I thought it was worth mentioning. All right, let's try this off-axis rejection. This is me talking into the side of the microphone. This is how much sound it will capture from the back, and this is from the other side as well. And now let's check out the off-axis rejection on the PodMic. This is me talking directly into the front. This is how much sound it will pick up from the side. This is how much sound it will pick up from the back. And this is how much sound it will pick up from the other side. One of the great things about both of these microphones is how little sound they pick up from anywhere other than the front. But there's one small sort of downside to that. If you've got someone else in the room, say they're sitting off to one side and you're sort of facing a similar direction, and you turn and you talk away from the microphone, where's the audio gone, right? So that's one of those things you got to watch out for. If you are turning with this mic, it's best to probably turn the microphone around with you just to make sure your voice isn't going to sort of get lost. Let me just show you that on the other camera. So if I was to turn my head and keep talking, you'll probably notice my voice has been almost completely lost. And then when I bring it back around, it sounds great. So both of these mics do a really great job of rejecting sound from anywhere other than directly in front of them. And lastly, I thought we'd see how it goes sitting back a little bit from the microphone. I have cranked the gain up on my preamp a little bit more, but this is how it sounds. If you've got someone in the room who likes to kind of kick back a little bit and not be right up on the microphone, this is how it can sound at a little bit of a further distance away. Also using the pop filter, it's an essential. And now back to the Rode PodMic. One thing I noticed when I checked my waveforms, sitting at the same distance, talking at the same volume, this seems to have a hotter signal going into the computer, which means you don't have to push this microphone as hard, which might make it a better choice than the Procaster if someone likes to sit back a little bit from the microphone. Once you get up close to either of them, both are good, but this one definitely has a stronger waveform at a distance than the Procaster. And lastly, I'm going to give you my thoughts and opinions about both of these microphones. Now, I left all the spec stuff out. It's been done to death. Specs are really easy to find. You can go to the website. Links will be in the description below, as well as some affiliate links through to B&H if this video is helpful and you choose to buy one. So this particular microphone, the Rode Procaster, is probably the best out of the two when you're talking up close. But you do need one of these. I've said it a million times. The pop filter or windshield is an absolute essential with this microphone if you want to get that big sound. Now, you can drop it and it still sounds pretty good, but the plosives will get really annoying if you talk into the front, which means you kind of have to talk into the side, which still sounds great, but I kind of find that irritating to do. It's just me. You know, some people will swear by that. For me, I'd prefer to talk into the front and not have to worry about the plosives. So I think overall, this is a really solid microphone. It sounds great. The off-axis rejection is fantastic as well. In terms of sound quality, it's all subjective stuff, but I think I like this one just that little bit more. And now back to the Rode PodMic. So am I happy with my purchase decision, or should I have just got two of the Rode Procasters? I think this microphone's great. We used it on our in-house podcast with no pop filter, and it did pretty well. I could just hear it pop a little bit there, but overall, it's a much more usable microphone straight out of the box. And one thing that this has the advantage of is it has a much better microphone mount as well. You can tilt the microphone much easier. This whole mechanism here is so much better than the one you get with the Procaster. Now, one downside of the PodMic, at least in terms of its packaging, there's no vinyl bag for this, which kind of sucks. I really wish Rode would have had it included some sort of pouch or bag for this particular microphone. So when I'm not using it, it has to go back in the box. When I'm not using the Procaster, I just simply slip the vinyl bag over the top of it. I would have really liked to have seen just something else included in the bag, but it is a little bit cheaper. In terms of sound quality, will anyone actually care who are listening to your podcast? Will they be able to tell the difference? No, both create really great audio. Now, I'm going to go back to the other microphone right now and explain an essential thing. Now, the Rode Procaster is rated at negative 56 dB, which means if you've got an entry-level preamp on a sound card, for example, odds are you're going to need something like a cloud lifter to boost the signal to get it into your sound card without getting a lot of noise. Now, the problem with a lot of conventional home sound cards is they sound great with just about every microphone except for probably 3 or 4. This, the Rode Procaster, the PodMic, and the Shure SM7B. All of these are really low gain microphones that require something else to push it. So what you're listening to is my Behringer Ultra Gain Pro as the preamp for this, then going into my sound card so I can keep the gain on my sound card down. You get a lot less noise doing this. If you were to crank the sound card all the way up to get the right amount of level, you're going to hear a lot more noise. And you only hear the noise on these home sort of budget sound cards once you actually crank the gain most of the way up. So just be very cautious of that. If you're going to buy either of these two microphones, make sure you either get a cloud lifter, which I find kind of limiting. I'd much prefer to have a mixer, or you can go for one of these Ultra Gain Pros as well, which is a 2-channel one, and I think it sounds pretty nice. But I'll leave links to everything that's in this video in the description below. So just before I mentioned, I do plan on buying another one of these for our 3-person podcast. I've been using a Rode NT1 for a while, which has been a great mic, but it does pick up a lot more ambient noise. So I decided which one of these would be best to get as a third. my instinct was sort of saying, go for the Procaster, it's only $50 more. And I'm still sort of on the fence about it, but I gotta tell you, for 150 bucks here in Australia, I think this is an absolute steal. If you live in the US, it's gonna be way cheaper as well. Links will be in the description below. Just to remind you, I paid full price for these. They weren't free or gifts or anything like that. So I'm giving you my experience on which one I like best and why. And there's gonna be times where I'm doing a two-person podcast where two of these, they kind of look cool. I don't know, they're just different as well. I really like this, and it doesn't matter visually how they look, but I like the fact that the PodMic, it's just a little bit smaller, sounds almost as good, maybe better, depending on it's all subjective on what you like. I think this ticks a lot of boxes. So thanks again for watching. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below. If you're new to podcasting and you want to get started and you might be on a budget, check out this video up in the cards as well. It'll walk you through some of the stuff that you need to get it done on a budget. Thanks again for watching. Catch you soon. See ya.